that our survey group want to see solved across the API industry? Well, what we're seeing again is standardization is coming back as the top challenge organizations hope to see solved as they're looking to scale their APIs. Why is that? Well, in the absence of standardization, for me, I think API delivery approaches become bespoke. If they come bespoke, then developer productivity will decline. If that happens, then I expect costs and time to market to increase when you're trying to accommodate and deliver new changes. And the likelihood is that the overall quality of the APIs and consumer experiences themselves will wane over time. If all of those things happen, then probably your APIs will have lower adoption, and that will impact the return on investment in your APIs. So that's probably why standardization is ranking as the top challenge in general. For me, standardization and governance as a general topic is not about being authoritarian. It's really around creating safe guide rails that can empower teams to innovate, spend less time bike shedding and discussing challenges that have already been solved at an organizational level. It's a very broad topic, though. Of course, we could have a dedicated webinar around it. It's not just about naming conventions and style guides. While I actually mentioned style guides, there is some details in the full report around the usage of style guides across the survey group. But standardization, it covers data models, it covers standardization, the business models and the workflows, how you deal with identity and security and connectivity, and that overarching process for delivering your API products and managing the lifecycle of API products. Focusing a little bit on the standardization of data models, I think looking at the increase in JSON schema could be an indicator that organizations are realizing that that's a good candidate for defining your information models at an organization level across the different capabilities. So that could also be one of the reasons that we're seeing increase in JSON schema usage. What's also interesting here from the challenges perspective is that security is continuing as the number 2 challenge that companies want to see solved. And again, as API attack vectors increase, I think it's encouraging to see that there's a heightened understanding that we need to do more from a security perspective. Interestingly enough, reuse and composability this year has joined security on 40%, coming in at number 2. This might well relate back to the increase on composable architecture and organizations looking for more ways to improve consumption and improve the return on investment that they're putting in. For all of the other challenges, I think it's pretty much status quo compared to other surveys that we've run. Now, microservices themselves and componentization in general, it's not a magic wand. Of course, there's benefits to be had, but technical and organizational readiness really does play a big part. And we're seeing the adoption or success of microservices being throttled somewhat by the trouble organizations are having finding the appropriate skilled people within their teams. So more than half of the survey group this year at 53% cited experience or skills as being the primary obstacle to implementing microservices. And this held true right across organization sizes, especially true for those that are newer to the API development scene. And I think you could expect that kind of segment of the survey to have lower standardization and governance, which again will make it harder for them to implement microservices successfully. But lack of people and/or lack of time due to workload, they made up the number 2 and number 3 obstacles for achieving success with microservices. For the smaller to medium-sized organizations, it was lack of people that scored number 2, while for bigger organizations, it was lack of time due to workload that came in at the number 2 spot. IT maturity, processes and infrastructure, as well as lack of organizational readiness, were the next entries of note. And I think interestingly enough, for the large organizations with over 10,000 employees, it was IT maturity, processes and infrastructure that came in at the number 2 spot. Now, delivering change and managing the runtime aspects of your API portfolio, so you go to the effort of producing your APIs, you get them out there, and that's only the start of your journey. You want them to be consumed, you want them to be long living. So dealing with how you deliver change and how you react to service outages is becoming increasingly important. And what we're seeing based on the survey data is that organizations who are applying techniques like contract testing are able to recover from service outages more quickly compared to the overall sample of respondents. So the percentage of respondents who reported 1 hour or less for service outage recovery was similar for both groups. But as I mentioned, organizations using contract testing had fewer respondents reporting recovery times of half a day or more. Now, it could well be, if you're applying those techniques, that there is a high potential that you're experiencing less outages overall, which could explain the figures a little bit more. But in general, what we're seeing is that most organizations are able to recover from service outages within 2 hours, and that's a significant proportion. So it's 64.5%. So I think that's pretty encouraging. And if you're interested in DORA metrics like mean time to recovery, I really see this as being a positive indicator, because of course, the quicker you can recover typically, then the better it looks from a delivery and operational performance perspective. Nevertheless, of course, there is more to the DORA metrics than just mean time to recovery, but I also feel contract testing does help there in general across other aspects like lead time for changes, deployment frequency, and the overall availability of your APIs, because the likelihood is you will have less breaking changes getting out there, which keeps our consumers happy, of course.